Talking about a true populist. The book is out. It's already a bestseller, American Underdog. He is the guy that, of course, shot down Eric Cantor, the big establishment, compromising Republican, in the vein of Boehner having to leave and, all the rest of these people. So exciting. And davidbrat.com, again, is his website. Thank you so much for coming on with us. For the next 20 minutes till this hour ends, I'd like to give you the floor for your view on populism, what's happening in Congress, and where this country's going. And do you think Trump is neck and neck, ahead or behind? What does your gut instinct tell you, Congressman?
Yeah, my gut, well, I think you set it up really well right there. I mean, you look at the Brexit thing right now. I'll just start with that because it just shows you that this thing is international in scope. And my book highlights 3 pillars that made the United States great, but it equally applies over across the pond. The Judeo-Christian tradition, and then the rule of law, and then the innovation of the free market system that has to be chosen. And Britain was first to the punch on all that stuff, right? I mean, they preceded us. And now Brexit, it's just interesting, the commentary. Brexit by itself isn't enough to ensure success. They have to go back to restoring their culture, which is the Judeo-Christian tradition, and then the rule of law and restoring their borders, and they have to go back to free markets. If they continue doing the socialized thing and the PC thing like we're doing, there's no clear path forward for them either. And so it's just amazing to me see the same exact stuff going on here. On the rule of law, our borders, immigration was a huge issue I ran on. Trump is running on it. It's 80% issue, and the leadership in Congress, they're not tone deaf. They exactly know it's a huge issue, but they're just scared. After the Romney loss, they went to this autopsy report, and that report basically taught us that we should all be scared of our own voters instead of being courageous. And so in the budget last year, instead of doing refugee, cutting off all the hot spots and state sponsors of terror, they didn't put that bill in. Brian Babin and I were working on that. Instead of doing that bill, they increased H-2B visas by 400%. And so there's your rule of law. In terms of the Judeo-Christian tradition, religious toleration is becoming a safe zone where you got to sign up before you can go to church, it looks like. And then on the free market system, not much in D.C. is free market at all. It's all cronies and elitists running the world either from Brussels or else from fancy hot spots around the world. But none of it's being run through constituents back home in our districts.
And, of course, a contemporary of yours would be somebody like Nigel Farage, a true populist, a patriot, a true conservative, a nationalist. He gave a speech to the Parliament of the EU yesterday that's ceremonial. He said, look, you're not laughing now. You were laughing. I'm getting from you, Congressman, the Washington rhinos and Democrats and liberals, they're not laughing anymore. They're more scared. Why don't they just embrace what made us great? Because they've got to see the writing on the wall. No amount of illegals they're shipping in or no amount of jihadis, that they think are their babies, are going to counterbalance this populist awakening. Or am I being too optimistic, Mr. Brat?
No, you're being too optimistic, but you're right. I mean, if you got a patriotic sense that you do, but the one variable you're missing is the one I taught for 20 years in economics, just always follow the money. And so if the people want a certain outcome, but it doesn't help the elitists control $4 trillion a year in the budget, it ain't going to happen. And that's what's going wrong, right? We don't have term limits. We got folks that are just shooting to be leaders in D.C. for the sake of being leaders, but they're not leading on the main levers that will move our country into better
direction. Sure, they're listening to the elites and not the people. So let me ask you this question, because you bring it up. And I never used to be on the whole bandwagon, just obsessing on Islam all day. But now they've opened us up to it. They're bringing in the most radical elements. The Evening Standard's reporting the new Muslim mayor came out. I'm sure you already know this. It happened last week and said no more women in bathing suits or scantily clad in billboards in London on buses or government property. He goes, we're going to start bringing in Sharia law, basically. And now he said we're going to take back control of London and ignore it and bring in more foreigners and basically make a breakaway state. He's actually saying this. I mean, this is seditious. And I see the left truly allied with Islam, with Orthodox, which is aggressive jihad Islam. And I used to hear this 5-10 years ago from conservatives, and I'd go, you guys are being overboard. Look, I know there's terrorists and stuff, but, you know, our elites aren't going to ally with this. I'm sorry. Obama and others have allied with it. Am I wrong, Congressman? What's going on here?
No, you nailed it, but there's some severe splits and contradictions coming up on the left. You just identified one of the huge ones, and that's what I try to outline in the book, right? I go through the Western synthesis of basically reason coming out of the Greeks, lining up with a Judeo-Christian tradition, and ISIS across the way doesn't know of this tradition in any way, shape, or form. And so our guys, Madison and Jefferson, were utopian in some sense. They were conservatives and knew that human nature is fallen, but they thought they could design a system that would separate power such that we could have religious toleration. What they could never envision a day where a certain religion would be intolerant, period.
Yeah, they thought freedom would be so popular, nothing could compete with it. But when it meets psycho cavemen who don't even understand it, what do we do then?
Yeah, well, and that's right. But the guys back then, it was reasoned freedom, right? It was freedom in the pursuit of truth and reason, and we've left that part off. Now it's just the 60s freedom, do whatever the heck you want, and so that's... And so
what are the liberals going to do when they're trying to say Trump is homophobic and it's his fault Orlando happened, when this guy's a jihadi and a Hillary supporter? I mean, they seem completely conflicted, as you said.
Well, and deep down, I'm friends with the Democrats up in D.C., too. They know it's not true. He's been in Manhattan for 50 years, right? And all of a sudden this week, he's all these bad things. I mean, they all smile up there. They know that's not true, but it's just the left doing their thing.
Wow. Congressman David Brat is our guest. Tell us about the book, Underdog. I haven't read it yet, but I intend to, because obviously your success story, what you did to the Republican establishment, I would say is the big chink in the armor, was the first big bellwether in this cycle.
Yeah, well, the main frustration, I taught economics for 20 years, and I taught 20-year-old kids sitting in front of me. They were just awesome. We had fun every day. And I went to seminary before I did my PhD in economics. So I always taught them you got to put ethics and economics together. And that gathers a chuckle these days. People think it's cute. But I meant it. We've racked up $19 trillion in debt. There's $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And the next generation is not going to see Social Security and welfare.
Yeah, where are the ethics? We're totally screwing ourselves now and the next generation, right. And they just say, oh, who cares about them?
Right, and so everything these days in the modern world has devolved into just this policy debate, right? Policy, policy, policy. And if you lose your culture, it doesn't matter what you try to do on the policy front, it's gone. So you've got to restore those basic institutions we had. Harvard, when it was founded, their motto was truth for Christ and church in 1640, right? When the Puritans, who they mock today, founded Yale, Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, et cetera.
Yeah, I love how they mock the founders who actually made them so great.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then Jefferson and Madison went to, roughly speaking, Princeton Seminary and studied Hebrew for kicks. And so these were hugely educated folks that put basic first principles down on paper and made us the most successful, richest, and the most just country, right? If you want to look at women's participation in the workforce, civil liberties, political rights.
And the left, we don't call the left, the totalitarian mental patients, invert that and claim we're the source of all the evil. Why do they do that? Because,
right, well, yeah. And that's the funny part. The left, they can't name a serious philosopher of note that they use to ground their system, right? I mean, they got Karl Marx and Rousseau and a few other lefties from Paris or something, but we're losing to a tradition that can't name a serious moral philosopher. And so that tells you we just don't have the fight in us. And most conservatives are just decent people. They go into business and make a living. They just assume, well, of course, the Judeo-Christian tradition is going to be around. Free markets, we're always going to be free to do this, and the rule of law is fine, and everyone will, of course, respect the police until none of those are the case anymore. Right now, if you say God bless you to a kid that sneezes in school, you get reprimanded. And the whole thing is being assaulted step by step by step. So I try to lay it out in the book and show people how these things have made us great in the first place, and then show the assault on these basic institutions.
Well, absolutely. And then the corruption in the system uses that corruption to further bring down what was good in the old system and to bring in more tyranny. It's like the UN and their Strong Cities initiative. and the Justice Department comes in and corrupts police with unconstitutional actions, then turns around and blames all police nationwide and then attempts to globalize them and federalize them. It's just incredible.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And last week on the no assault rifles for people on the terrorist wait list, and the left forgot a couple key features. One is no due process, but more importantly, guess who was going to be in charge of the private secret list?
That was going to be this jihadi guy who said at the FBI he wouldn't work against fellow Muslims.
Right, right, and the AG Loretta Lynch, right, is going to be she's targeting conservative groups along with the IRS and the Obama administration, and we're supposed to trust them to be the school monitor over truth and goodness.
Sure, but I forget his name. I saw the article in Breitbart and a bunch of others a few days ago. The guy that was going to run the list for her is a Muslim.
Oh, got you.
Yeah. Who with the FBI wouldn't go after jihadis.
Right. No, I know. It's inverted, right? And so Obama's goal at the outset, I think most of us were somewhat aware of the anti-colonial leanings, but his view is if you downgrade the United States, the world will be a better place. And that he's working on that systematically. Instead of, after World War II, the United States and Britain and France set up the modern liberal order, Bretton Woods, and worked with our arch enemies, Germany and Japan, and we were trading with them and had good relations, and it was a win-win, and now it's the leftists are taking control, and those relationships are falling apart.
That's right. And again, Hitler was a socialist. You can call him a fascist, but whatever. He came from the left, a command and control guy. So was Stalin. And they sit there. I mean, they don't understand. The left historically, look at the French Revolution. It was a nightmare. They just run around murdering people. I don't know what's wrong with them.
Yeah, well, getting rid of history in the K-12 agenda right now is one of the most troubling things. And so that's another reason I put the book together, American Underdog, proof that principles matter, right? And that's what I'm trying to show the kids, that these principles will affect their life, period.
Absolutely. Well, I'm finding the youth are very hungry to find the truth, and people should get your book. They should put it in libraries. They should get it out to everybody, because I want to talk about the election, where you think it's going, and where Obama's going with the open borders, ignoring the Supreme Court. I mean, there's got to be... Will Hillary get in trouble for Benghazi? What about the new report? We'll hit Benghazi and a lot more. Final short segment with our guest, David Brat, davidbrat.com. Now, Congressman, I don't want to get you in hot water here, getting into subjects, like that and going further with Benghazi, but Hillary's lied about it all. Her emails show that. Where do you think this is going? Because if she gets away with this, doesn't this set the precedent for anything to go, sir?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, I mean, the left kind of just says there's no there, but their 800-page report and the few new pieces I've heard coming out today seem pretty significant. And those guys, if you got Gowdy and Jim Jordan telling you something, they're truth tellers. They don't mess around. And so I think we got the real deal this time.
Well, what do we do then? Move for hearings on Hillary? Or, I mean, does a grand jury indict her? What do we do?
Yeah, well, they're going to have to follow up, but we're having a hard enough time taking out Koskin and the head of the IRS. Our own leadership has to get in on the fight. And I heard one of the guys today, I don't want to identify him, but he was saying there's a little hint that our leadership is not in any hurry to get into a fight over this. So we got to convince them it's the right thing to do. And we haven't fought 7 years against Obama. I came in a year and a half ago on the unconstitutional amnesty, and we still haven't put up a fight on that one. And so that's why the people are getting fed up with our brand right now. They want to see a fight. And so I'm not on that committee, but I'll encourage a fight every bit along the way.
Well, we know you're in there fighting. Speaking of that, the Supreme Court says, hey, you got to follow the law. So Obama comes out and says, I'm not going to follow it. And it's beyond just not enforcing. They complete the smuggling process, as you know. And we just got new video, Congressman. We'll send it to you, with the Border Patrol in McAllen saying we're ordered to ship people in that have TB and scabies. Right. I mean, that's sensational. Obama orders Border Patrol to ship in TB.
Yeah, no, I mean, the problem with that issue is it's just huge. The passports, the refugees, the open border, the drug channels, the ISIS channels. And it's just too much. But finally, I think we're getting to a critical point. The folks in D.C. are starting to get the memo, and there's enough the average person at home is starting to see the impact when you're paying the tax bill for all of this, and all of a sudden you see your state and the governor doesn't even know there's facilities all over your state, people being shipped in. I've heard they get to change states based on their feelings these days. You can guess where I'm going with that one.
Listen. I mean, they don't even, most of them just get released to Democratic Party facilities.
Yeah, no, I've been following in Virginia. We're keeping our eyes on several facilities in my own 7th district.
Yeah, they won't even tell our governor the numbers. They won't even tell the governor of Texas the numbers.
Yeah, well, and so you're getting to the key point here is our government is demand driven, right? I mean, ultimately the citizens have to get fed up. And so you're educating people, I'm educating people. That's what's got to happen. And we got to educate the next generation that you got to put up a fight if you would like to keep living in this country the way it is.
Well, Congressman David Brat, you're one of the best up there, davidbrat.com, the new book, bestseller, American Underdog. Absolutely. We really appreciate you. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to speak to you again.
Thanks, Alex.